agreement to sale of goods is also considered as a activity under a Sale of Goods Act 1930. As a buyer, I have a right to reject the goods or a commodity. It is a right of a seller to give or facilitate the good that is demanded, that is been ordered by a buyer. Acceptance of a good that is made by a buyer and payment of a good that must be made from the end of buyer. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I am Mr. Hemant Kumar from the Department of Commerce and Management, Vidhyaashram First Aid College, MYSURU, the Temple of Excellence. In today's session, we are going with session 3 of Unit 2. It's about a Sale of Goods Act 1930 of a subject Business Regulatory Framework for 4th semester BCom students. Moving forward, this is agenda of today's session. We need to cover 2 topics in today's session. Number 1, the performance of contract of sale under Sale of Goods Act 1930 and unpaid seller and his rights according to Sale of Goods Act 1930. These are the 2 topics that we need to cover in today's session. The performance of contract of sale under Sale of Goods Act 1930. Okay, so here how the performance of contract of sale is going to happen between 2 parties. As I said, the contract of sale means, so here it is going to happen between 2 parties. One is a seller and another one is a buyer. Okay, seller and buyer. The Sale of Goods Act 1930 regulates the performance of contract of sale in India. So here the contract of sale is governed by the Sale of Goods Act 1930. The Act defines a contract of sale as an agreement wherein a seller transfers or agree to transfer good to the buyer for price. So what happened? Not only sale of a product is considered under a Sale of Goods Act, but also agreement to sale of goods is also considered as a activity under a Sale of Goods Act 1930. The performance of such an contract involves the transfer of good and payment of price. So what happened? Only if we enter the contract, but we never and ever end the contract, it is not a valid contract. So what happens when the contract is going to come for an end? Okay, so when the performance is going to happen, so what happens? So between 2 parties means, so he's a seller, he's a buyer. Okay, he's going to sell the product means transfer the product, the ownership of a product to Mr. B, and he's going to pay the money to Mr. A. Then the contract is going to come for an end. That is a valid contract according to the Sale of Goods Act 1930. So here under Sale of Goods Act 1930, it is classified into 3 dimensions. So 3 activities that I can say. First one is delivery, acceptance and payment. Very simple, as I gave you the example here. Okay, here what happened? Mr. A, he is going to deliver the goods to Mr. B. Mr. B is going to accept goods, and Mr. B, what he is going to do? He is going to do the payment to Mr. A. So it is about Sale of Goods Act. Okay, contract of sale that we call it as a delivery of a good that is made by a seller, acceptance of a good that is made by a buyer, and payment of a good that must be made from the end of buyer. Okay, so what happens if there is any defect or the default of a goods or a commodity? So he have a complete right to neglect the good or refuse to buy the goods or a commodity. We are going to learn about the seller's duties and buyer's duties. What is the duty of a seller and what is the duty of a buyer? Seller duties: deliver goods as agreed upon. Be very careful. Deliver good as agreed upon. Before entering the contract, we are supposed to specify the terms and condition. As I gave you the example in the previous sessions. Okay, so if I want to purchase an Apple iPhone, okay, so I am supposed to specify the seller saying that, okay, so Apple iPhone must be white in color. Version is iPhone 15. 18 bionic chip must be included. 256 GB of inbuilt. Okay, so and so features must be discussed. Okay, and the same product must be delivered to me. So deliver goods as agreed upon. He is going to agree for these all terms and conditions. So what happened if black color Apple iPhone had delivered to me? I'm going to neglect or reject the good. I'm not going to accept the good because I did not get what I had expected, what I had ordered. Okay, so as a buyer, I have a right to reject the goods or a commodity. It is a right of a seller to give or facilitate the good that is demanded, that is been ordered by a buyer. Make arrangement for the goods while transit. Transit means it is nothing but the transaction or the transfer or the supply. Okay, so what happened? So for example, there is a person from Karnataka, one who is going to purchase a product from Maharashtra from Amazon India Private Limited. It is his right to transfer the goods from Maharashtra to the Karnataka to the buyer, because buyer does not have any right to transfer, means take the shipment of good, means he can collect the good, but delivery must be made from the seller. Inform the buyer about the delivery method. Okay, so how it is going to delivered, when it is going to delivered. The best example is online shopping. Okay, so what happened, once you place the order in Amazon India Private Limited, it is going to show you the status within 3 days. It is going to delivered within 4 days, within 24 hours. Okay, the good is been delivered. So it is going to give the complete information regarding the good. Okay, so the seller is the one who have to deliver the goods to the buyer. It is his duty to deliver the goods to the buyer for his place that is been order placed. Okay, so what happens? Inform the buyer about the delivery method. As I said, Amazon India Private Limited, as soon as we order for the product, okay, so what it is going to happen? So it is going to show the date that is going to deliver and also time as well. Fine. So and the mode of delivery. Okay, so how it is going to deliver, whether the delivery means in terms of a big product, whether it is a saw route, whether it is going to come from the flight, whether it is going to deliver from the train or any kind of automobile. Okay, they are going to specify. This limits, this kind of things is not applicable for few product. If we order in online, so it is not required to us whether it is going to deliver by train, it is going to deliver by automobile, whether it is going to deliver by airways or waterways. Okay, so it is not needed for few product. Okay, so these things or information is needed. Fine. Be ready and willing to give position of goods to the buyer. As a seller, he must be ready to sell his product, and also he must be ready to give the position of good to the buyer. So what happened? So he is ready to sell the product, but the price of that particular product had not fixed. He cannot say that you just purchase the product or take away the product today. Okay, so I'm going to decide the price and I will let you know tomorrow. He is not supposed to give these all reasons. Buyer duties. Okay, so tender due payment. Okay, so all the buyers, they are not supposed to make a payment within a single payment, means a single installment. Okay, so they may take a number of installment. Okay, so lawfully they have a right to take an installment, but within that specified period of time that they are going to clear the amount or the credit that is taken by the seller. Accept delivery of goods. He have a complete right to accept the delivery of good. If a good is damaged, he have a right to reject the delivery of good. Examine goods for conformity with contract. Okay, so he is going to examine what? The conformity of goods. Conformity of good means regarding the quality of the good, whether the good that had delivered, whether it is original or duplicate, whether it is working in condition or no, whether it is a right product or a wrong product that is being delivered. If there is any defect or the default with the product, he have to recognize if there is any fault or the defect in the product, and he have a complete right to send back the product. Pay for goods even if they have rejected. So as I give you the example in this, okay, if the product is defected, if there is any problem with the particular product or wrong product had delivered, so what happens? Firstly, we are going to pay the money. Okay, so we are supposed to do what? We are supposed to pay the money and collect the good, and also we have a complete right to send back the good to the seller. Best example is online shopping in Amazon, Myntra's, Flipkart. Okay, so we had purchased the product. Okay, so there is any problem with the product. Okay, if we get to know that there is a problem with the product also, okay, we have to collect the product by paying complete amount. What happens? So after collecting the good, okay, by paying the money, we have an option called return. Okay, we have a return option also in Amazon, also Flipkart, Myntra, whatever it is. Okay, so we are supposed to send back the product to the seller, and he is going to make a payment within 3 working days. That is the activity which is going to happen under Sale of Goods Act. Hence, it is a right or a duty of a buyer. Unpaid seller and his rights according to Sale of Goods Act 1930. So, as I said, unpaid seller, okay, so partly or fully a seller is not paid. We call him as a unpaid seller. If a seller is not paid a single rupee also, the due of single rupee also will be considered as a unpaid seller. An unpaid seller is defined as section 45 of Sale of Goods Act 1930. According to section 45 of Sale of Goods Act 1930, unpaid seller refers to a seller who has not yet received the full price or of the goods or sold, or when the buyer fails to fulfill their payment. Okay, so when the buyer fails to fulfill the payment partly or fully obligations. Okay, it is an obligation of a buyer to pay the amount and collect the good, or to make a promise to pay the amount in future. The seller's right against a buyer and the goods are crucial to protect their interest and facilitate the recovery of their dues. So what happened in a Sale of Goods Act, once the goods had delivered, okay, so the buyer, he is going to make a payment whether wholly or partly. So he is not paid the complete amount. So what happens? There is a due. The seller is going to consider as a unpaid seller. Okay, so here we are going to study this topic under two circumstances. Right of unpaid seller against buyer. Unpaid seller and his rights. So in unpaid seller and his rights, okay, as we know, as we had studied who is an unpaid seller, and right now we are going with his rights, a right of unpaid seller. Okay, so it is classified into two categories. Seller have a right on goods and also the seller have a right on a buyer. Okay, so according to the Sale of Goods Act 1930, right of seller against good. Right, number one, right of lend. For example, Mr. A and Mr. B. Okay, so right to lend means Mr. A is a seller, Mr. B is a buyer. So what happened? Mr. B had given advance, okay, so to purchase a product, but he had not paid complete amount. Until and unless B is going to pay the complete amount, Mr. A have a complete right to retain a product without delivering a product. Okay, so what happens? So he had agreed to make a payment but not yet made a payment. After making a payment, Mr. A can deliver the product. Until and unless he is going to make a payment, he cannot deliver the product. That is about right to lend. Lend means retention. Okay, so retention of a product, retention of a ownership of a particular product title. Right of stopping in transit. Right of stoppage of transit. This transit is nothing but the transaction which is going to happen. What happens? There are two parties, Mr. A and Mr. B. Okay, so Mr. B is a seller and he is a buyer, again the same thing. Okay, so he had paid a part of amount, okay, for as an advance. Based on that advance, he is going to send goods to Mr. B, but the goods had not yet delivered to Mr. B. But there is no response from Mr. B, from the end of Mr. B, until and unless there is a response or there is a payment. He have a complete right. He have a complete right to avoid the goods from the delivery. Means he have a complete right to stop the goods that is being delivered to Mr. B according to the act. Right to resale. Okay, so right to resale means there are two parties, Mr. A and Mr. B. Okay, so what happens? Mr. B had given 5,000 rupees of advance, saying that I will be purchasing that particular product. Okay, so what happens? So the product worth of rupees 1 lakh that he had considered, but only payment of 5,000 is happened. Okay, so what happened? He refused to pay complete amount to Mr. A. So Mr. A say that please pay me the amount, I am going to deliver the product. There is no response. Second time he say that if you won't pay the money, I am going to sell the goods to some other person. There is no response. And again he gave the opportunity to Mr. B to make a payment. There is no response from the end of Mr. B. What he did? he sold the same goods to Mr. C. Okay, so what happened? Mr. C paid full amount to Mr. A and purchased the product. Okay, so this situation we call it as a right to resale. Here he gave the opportunity to make a payment to Mr. B. He refused to do so, and also he informed regarding the resale of the product, but he refused to do. So what he did, he sold the product to somebody else. That is about resale of right to resale. Right of stopping in transit. Okay, so the good is been delivered from Mr. A to Mr. B. Okay, so he have a complete right, as I said. Okay, so to stop the goods that is being delivered to Mr. B. Next one, loss of right of lend. Okay, so what happened once the goods are delivered to Mr. B, he does not have any right to retain the good because it is already delivered to Mr. B. Okay, so he does not have any right to retain the good. Rights of unpaid seller against buyer. There are few rights of an unpaid seller against a buyer. Number one, right to lend. So it is about the retention of a good. Right of stopping of transit before making a transaction. Okay, before the goods get delivered, he have a complete right to stop the good. Suit for price. Okay, so he have a complete right to the losses that had happened. Okay, so he can recover the losses from the buyer and damages. Okay, he can claim the damages against a buyer and resale. He have a complete authority to resell the good. Okay, so if he refuse to make a payment interest. Okay, so if he take a longer period of time to make a payment, okay, he have a complete right to charge a interest for the specific amount. Okay, so as a interest according to Sale of Goods Act. The next session we are going with the Unit 3, it is about the Negotiable Instruments Act 1881. Thank you.